Stop scrolling. Picture a kid dribbling on a patch of concrete behind a small house in São Gonçalo, the ball skipping over bottle caps and potholes, the air buzzing with radios and motorcycles, and somebody yelling, "Vai moleque," from a balcony. He is small, wiry, and impossibly light on his feet, like his ankles are made of springs. He isn't playing to be noticed. He's playing because this is how his body breathes. That kid is Vinícius José Paixão de Oliveira Júnior, and this is a story about how a boy the world laughed at, too raw, too skinny, too chaotic, grew up in public, absorbed every bruise and turned them into fuel. This is the arc from rejected to MVP. He was born where dreams have to be stubborn to survive. São Gonçalo doesn't hand you a red carpet, it hands you a ball and a challenge. The rules are simple. If you want a bigger life, you'll have to outrun the smaller one chasing you. Vinícius learned the geometry of tight spaces on futsal courts, skinning defenders in areas where one bad touch ends the play. Futsal taught him to control the ball when it's too close for comfort, to change direction without changing speed, to give the defender a decision and punish either answer. That rhythm, stop-go, feint slice, half-step then explosion, became his grammar. Flamengo scouts saw a spark. The academy tried to give it oxygen. At Ninho do Urubu, he was Vini, a kid who played with the smile of someone who knew a secret about gravity. He climbed the youth categories like a kid climbing mango trees, barefoot, fearless, always reaching for the next branch. The club tried to protect him from the circus, but this is Brazil. Rumors spread, footage leaked. The talent was too bright to stay in a drawer. Before long he was debuting for the first team, and the Maracanã, accustomed to anthems, learned a new chorus. The rising roar when Vini caught the ball near the touchline with a fullback alone and afraid. His transfer to Real Madrid arrived like a thunderclap. So young, so expensive, so far from home. It was both a blessing and a dare. Madrid does not applaud potential for long, it demands proof. He moved to Spain with a teenager, S heart, and a professional, S expectations placed on his shoulders. And Spain met him with the cold honesty of elite football. Welcome, now show us. Some nights he looked like a firework that forgot to explode. Other nights, he looked like a storm the scoreboard couldn't measure. The movies never show you the hours in the apartment alone, the long messages back home, the weight of a jersey that feels heavier after a missed chance. But that was the real work, confronting the silence between games. The rejections arrived in many forms. There were headlines hungry for a next prodigy to doubt. There were clips slowed down for ridicule, too many stepovers, a cross to nobody, a finish into the stands. There were murmurs from the seats when he miscontrolled a pass or rushed a shot. In moments of blunt cruelty, the laughter stung. He was called raw, wasteful, a sprinter pretending to be a striker. One night at halftime, an older teammate was caught on camera complaining that passing to him was like playing against themselves. That moment could have broken him. Instead, it became a hinge. In the second half of his story, he chose not to get bitter. He got better. Improvement for Vinícius did not arrive as a miracle. It arrived as a method. He began to recalibrate the finish. Head up earlier, plant foot calmer, choose the far post more often, disguise the near post when the keeper leaned. He learned to make the last touch before the shot the quietest touch of the move. He tuned his first step, not just for acceleration, but for separation, the angle that turns a shoulder into a shield. He sharpened the timing of his arrival at the back post, arriving late enough to be unmarked and early enough to attack the cross with intent. Coaches drilled, teammates demanded, and he absorbed. He wasn't trying to prove people wrong. He was trying to become the player he already saw in his head. Carlo Ancelotti, with his calm surgeon's manner, nudged him toward the best versions of himself. A winger who could finish like a 9, combine like a 10, and defend with the adrenaline of a fan. Karim Benzema taught him the art of tempo. when to pause for the overlap, when to accelerate through a gap that looked too small to fit a ghost. Luka Modric taught him that the ball listens to serious people. Treat it with respect, and it will take you to beautiful places. Toni Kroos showed him the value of economy, 2 touches that cut a knot into a clean line. Thibaut Courtois and Dani Carvajal taught him what resilience looks like when the scoreboard is against you and the world is loud. A team of champions became a university, and Vini graduated with a degree in end product. Then came the nights that branded his name to memory. Against Liverpool in Paris, he didn't shake the stadium with a 30-yard drive. He arrived where goals actually live, at the back post, quiet and deadly, and pushed the ball across the line. That is what maturity looks like in a forward, the humility to accept that poetry is fine, but points are better. He celebrated with the grin of a kid whose neighborhood could feel him from an ocean away. The Champions League isn't a plaque, it's an X-ray. It shows you whether your game has bones. His did. Still, he would meet a different kind of rejection, the uglier one. Racism tried to drag him backward, to make him small in a sport he was making bigger. He refused. He pointed to his skin and to the name on his back. He pointed to the badge on his chest. He pointed to the stands and the cameras and said, "See me." He fought with dignity and fire, demanding accountability from institutions that prefer long statements to quick action. This is part of his story too. Not just the goals, but the courage to remain joyful and visible when some want you invisible. He chose to dance, not to hide. He made celebration an act of resistance and invitation. Come, we are still here. The football improved while the person grew. He added a playmaker's calm to a sprinter's urgency. He learned how to bend a back line with a run that doesn't even touch the ball. He learned to accept the double team with a smirk, double me, and someone else is free. He learned the difference between dribbling because you can and dribbling because you must. The numbers, the goals, the assists, the progressive carries began to chase him, not the other way around. And in big matches, when hearts beat louder and legs get heavy, he stayed light. Madrid is a city that writes symphonies with football. Vinícius learned to conduct the loud parts and the quiet ones. There were league titles where he cut the field at full speed and laid chances on silver plates. There were Champions League runs where he turned defenders into decisions and decisions into mistakes. He embraced the responsibility of being the outlet when Madrid needed to breathe, the accelerant when they needed to burn, the poise when they needed to wait. The Bernabeu, which once sighed at his misses, began to rumble when he stood up from the touchline. Fear turned to faith. And then, as always with careers that matter, came the season where a phrase hardened around his name. From rejected to MVP, call it player of the season, call it best on the pitch, call it the difference. You can pick the match where it clicked for you. The day he shredded a rival on a derby afternoon, the night he bent a final to his will, the month where every defender looked like an arrow pointing to goal. MVP isn't a trophy alone, it's a verdict delivered by games that matter. He earned it not with highlights stitched on social media, but with 90-minute commitments to the craft. Tracking back in the 87th, offering himself in the 91st, choosing the right pass when a wrong one would have looked sexier. What changed? He didn't soften his style, he clarified it. The feints became threats, not decorations. The touches became messages, not monologues. He discovered that the scariest dribble is sometimes the one you don't attempt because the pass is lethal. He discovered that maturity doesn't mean you run less, it means you run where it hurts the most. And he discovered a simple human truth that separates a prospect from a pillar. A leader is someone whose courage is contagious. Brazil watched from across the ocean and nodded. In the yellow shirt, he brought the same electricity, the same willingness to try the improbable, and the same growth toward efficiency. New managers drew new maps for him, sometimes wide to stretch, sometimes inside to combine. And he found ways to be inevitable in either postcode. For a generation of kids on Brazilian courts, his is a map you can copy, not because you'll be him, but because the lessons are universal. Protect your joy, refine your tools, and keep showing up when the world is tired of waiting on you. He never pretended the rejections didn't happen. He kept the receipts, not to clap back on social media, but to measure himself against himself. He learned to thank the boos for their data. Every mistake became a clue. He stopped seeing criticism as a verdict and started treating it as a weather report. Useful, but it changes tomorrow. When you carry that mindset into elite environments, you change the chemistry of a locker room. Teammates trust you more because you're not asking for permission to be brave. You're asking for the ball because you're brave already. And there is something else less tactical than moral. Vinícius is proof that joy can be work, that smiling can be serious, that dancing can be strategy. He is also proof that discipline is not an enemy of flair. It is the bodyguard that lets flair leave the house safely. He trains like a pro, eats like a pro, recovers like a pro. The highlight reels are built on the back of the boring stuff: glute activation, sleep schedules, ankle mobility, shooting reps by the 100. He made a decision a long time ago that talent would not be the ceiling, it would be the floor. In Madrid's biggest nights, you see the whole journey folded into a single action. He receives on the touchline, shoulder checks, shifts the ball a foot inside, and the defender freezes between closing space and protecting the lane. That 1 second freeze is where Vinny lives. He pushes, he punishes, he points to the name on the back. He knows who he is now. And because he knows, the game knows too. So how do you tell this story to someone who didn't see the beginning? Start with the laughter and end with the laughter, but notice how it changes. At the start, they laughed at the chaos, at the air kicks, the overhits, the cruelties of learning under floodlights. At the end, they laugh because a defender just got sent for a hot dog, because a final just tilted on a single cut, because everybody in the stadium knew what he would do and couldn't stop it anyway. Same sound, different song. If there's advice hiding inside his run, it sounds like this. Your rhythm is not a problem. It's your advantage. Keep it. Your edges are not weaknesses. They are raw material. Shape them. The people who reject you are not your authors. They are your editors. Use them. And when you finally step into the moment you once begged for, don't apologize for how brightly you shine. Light doesn't sign consent forms. One day, many years from now, someone will ask where it started. He'll say a crowded house, a futsal court, a backpack stuffed with sandwiches, and a dream that took more space than his clothes. He'll smile about the first boots, the first bus rides to training, the first time a grown man tried to clatter him and found only air. He'll remember the first Bernabeu whistle and the first Bernabeu standing ovation. He'll remember that the distance between the two is measured not in months, but in choices. Thousands of small ones made on days without cameras. This is not a fairy tale, it is a case study. The subject is Vinícius Júnior. The method is radical persistence. The result is a footballer who plays with a grin and a knife, a teammate who multiplies others, a symbol bigger than a club and braver than a slogan. There are more trophies waiting, more finals to be bent, more kids to see themselves in his celebration and think, if he can dance there, maybe I can dance here. That's legacy, when your joy becomes a public commodity. And so we close where we began, a ball on concrete, a boy who moves like he's already heard the music of the crowd. He keeps the ball too close, then too far, then the perfect distance from the next desperate lunge. He is learning, failing, absorbing, refusing to be defined by a week, a clip, a comment. He grows. Years later, under the weight of white shirts and big nights, he takes the ball in the same way and does the same thing, believes. The world, which once asked if he could finish, asks a different question now. How do you stop him from starting? You don't. That's the point, because once a player has turned doubt into ritual and pressure into pace, the game stops arguing and starts applauding. The scoreboard doesn't care what they said about him at 19, it cares what he does at 90. And there, with lungs burning and legs heavy and one more run to make, Vinícius Júnior is smiling again. He taps the badge, he opens his arms to the noise, and he tells the camera the line that titles his journey, in a language the whole planet understands. From rejected to MVP,